Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with award-winning jazz pop singers and storyteller Kate Schutt. We caught up with her on March 1st to talk about her upcoming April 30th, 2021 release of her CD, Bright Nowhere. On this new project, she wrote it as a tribute to her mother, who passed away after battling ovarian cancer for close to 5 years. Her music has been featured on NPR, and they call her vocals glassily clear and glossily sweet. Her music story is a great one, so please get to know her and dig this interview.
Hey, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, I'm very, very happy to be here. I was checking out your playlist from the month of February. They look amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm just so happy to be here. It's so great to talk to you.
Right on. Great to talk to you. Let's hop in here, and before we really get into kind of the creative approach to Bright Nowhere, talk to me a little bit about this coming out during this time. I mean, I know it's April 30th, and things are getting better, but we're still in a pandemic, and there's still a lot of strange things going on in this country. Talk to me about the timing and just how you feel about this.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I mean, look, does anybody ever want to release an album all about death? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But there couldn't be a better time, I think, really, being able to... I mean, the reason I wrote this music is because my mom was dying of ovarian cancer, and I needed a way to communicate to her and to everybody else sort of what was going on, you know, in the family, inside myself, inside herself, inside, you know, just the approach of how does one have a good death, and what does it look like to approach the end of life with one's eyes wide open. I thought that these songs could function kind of as like a key to a lock. You know, it's so hard in our culture for people to talk about death and dying, and sometimes all you need, I've found that sometimes all you need is just like something to get it started. And once you do, of course, most everybody has been through some kind of loss. And certainly the longer you live, the more you experience that. And people have a lot to say and a lot that they want to share, but it's the getting started that's the hard part. And using songs to do that, you know, as the way in, you know, something about the combination of music and lyrics that just unlocks our hearts. And so during COVID, you know, this music to me has felt even more important. I mean, I have to be totally honest with you, you know, in the beginning it was sort of hard, like there was so much going on and so much dying. It was sort of like, really, is this the time? But then as things started, you know, snowballing, unfortunately, I realized that there was just no better time.
Well, I guess that's kind of the way life is. It's just like when we heard all those reports from Texas, it's like as if living through a pandemic wasn't enough. And at the same time in Kansas City, we were going through a lot of those temperatures and going through rolling blackouts and things like that. But what are you going to do? I mean, you got to keep living, and no matter what, even if there isn't something going on, there's always going to be something else going on. So it's just the way that life works. So
the only other thing I want to say, just one more thing I want to say, which is that, like, you know, I knew what this record was going to be about when I set out to write it, obviously. And I also knew it was extremely important, if I was going to tell the truth, that death had to include both the light and the dark. You know, that death isn't just darkness, you know, and so it was really important to me, and you by now have heard the record. And so, you know, there's a lot of really upbeat music on there that addresses these topics, but you know, if you weren't listening closely, you might not know that. And so that to me is really important as well, is that this record and these songs aren't 100% downers, you know, that there's a lot of joy there as well.
And you had an Emmy award-winning producer, arranger on this album. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the construction from an artistic standpoint of this and how you ultimately feel. What do you want the listener to get from this experience?
Great questions. Well, yeah, you know, I had written all these songs kind of over a very long period of time because I was my mother's caregiver for 5 years. So I wasn't, for many, many parts of that time, I was not even playing an instrument. You know, I was just tending to my mom's care. But when I eventually finished writing the songs, various people had heard them in their, stripped down version. Like my mom had heard 7 of them before she died. And so I would play them kind of guitar and voice, and because I wrote most of them on the guitar, and everyone would say, man, that's amazing. Like, you should just go in and record it guitar and voice. And I said, no, I really don't think that's it. Like, I know it's not, it's bigger than this. It sounds bigger than this. And so then I kept looking for the right producer. I mean, I self-produced all my other records, but I knew this one I did not want to self-produce. And so I kept looking and looking, and long story short, my publisher, after recommending a number of other people, finally thought of Rob Mounsey. And Rob is a musician's musician. I mean, just an incredible pianist, arranger, producer. Just literally was on or produced some of my favorite records. I mean, if you go to his discography, it's ridiculous. And so my publisher, Dan, was like, what about Rob Mounsey? And I was like, I literally, the second he said it, I was like, absolutely. Like, it was not even there wasn't a beat, basically. So then it was, trying to convince Rob that he wanted to take this journey with me. And luckily for me, he did, and he got it. I mean, he's been around the block. He's had a lot of loss in his life as well. And so he totally got it. And then he and I just started working on the music and working on, the arrangements and sort of putting him, with his contacts and his palette of people in his life of musicians. The colors he can paint with are pretty astounding. And he brought in Kevin Killen, legendary engineer. He brought in an incredible bass player, Richard Hammond, and incredible drummer, Chris Parker. And, that was sort of, we were the bed tracks, myself on guitar, Rob on piano. And then, Kevin engineering everything. And then literally everything from there on was just amazing. The background vocalist, it just became this huge production. And it was, spread out over quite a long period of time, just because Rob was busy arranging other things and producing other things. And we wanted to get the A-list, and sometimes those people, like Everett Bradley, who was one of the background singers, he's usually out on tour with Bon Jovi, so it took us a while, but the picture and the painting that we made is pretty fantastic and beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, literally I had to pinch myself pretty much every time we added a new layer to this music.
So you're an award-winning songwriter, singer, guitarist, and producer. Clearly this is your life. This is what you do. How did the seeds of music begin for you in the very, very beginning? Why did this music bug capture you so much?
Oh man, it's how does anything capture us? It's a mystery. I mean, I always loved. I'm the youngest. I have 2 older brothers, so in typical younger sister fashion, I was listening. I didn't have any autonomy in my own listening life as a kid. My brothers dictated everything, so I grew up listening to classic rock and whatever they were listening to, which was essentially classic rock. But I always had an ear on songs. I remember I had this sort of cryptic, mythical experience that I can't explain, that when I was young, I think this was around age 10 or so, this is in the days of cassette tapes, when you used to make cassette tapes for people or copy cassette tapes. And somebody must have made a copy of a Ricky Lee Jones record album for my brothers. They must have copied a cassette they had. But it had no, we had the copy appeared in our life and, in our childhood playroom. And I had this little boom box and I put it on. So there's no writing on it. And I put it on and I was just mesmerized by that music and by those songs. It was the record that has Chucky's in Love on it. And man, I had no clue who it was. I mean, literally, I had no clue. I had no way to find out. I mean, this is pre-internet, wouldn't definitely not ask my brothers, because they would then know that I was listening to this tape that was theirs, and they'd get really mad. And so I would just listen to this thing over and over and over again. And it just was like, one of the sort of formidable pieces of music that record that I can remember in my life. And then the other one, I mean, I have two others really. My parents had a record player, and they had the double album Ella Fitzgerald Sings the Cole Porter Songbook, and that thing was on constantly in my childhood. So like I knew all those Cole Porter songs, before I knew that I knew them. Because that was just playing all the time, and still to this day, that's probably some of my favorite music, and certainly Cole Porter's my biggest songwriting hero. And then the other record is Tina Turner. I was about in 1985 when her Private Dancer record came out. That just blew my mind. So those are kind of, about the age of 10, like those are the biggest, most strongest memories I have in my life. So I always knew I would do something in music for sure. I didn't know what. I always played piano and guitar, but that was my dad's an amazing harmonica player. He's self-taught, but he's a chromatic harmonica player. And so there was music all around.
What was the first concert that you saw that made you think that's what you want to do? You want to be up there doing that?
Oh man, Jackson 5 with Cyndi Lauper opening up in Philadelphia. Yeah, I mean, I think I might have been 10 years old or 11 years old. I mean, that was pretty amazing. It's an unforgettable concert. Soon after that, we saw Crosby, Stills, Nash in Philadelphia. So I grew up just outside of Philadelphia, so I used to see a lot of shows. My parents were big music lovers, and my brothers as well. I mean, I was going to those kinds of concerts. I mean, I'd have to say the first time I saw Tina Turner in 1985, I was lucky enough to see her in concert and the nosebleeds, and I still have the program from that concert today. There's just something about that energy, that live energy. That's really why I do it. I mean, I love writing songs, and of course, there's nothing to do if you're not writing songs, but that magical thing that happens when you play live.
It's funny. I have two things I was thinking when you said that. Did you see, was the Jackson 5 the reunion show?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I saw that in Kansas City at Arrowhead. It's the closest I came to Beatlemania. When that glove came up out of the ground, I was like, wow. Yeah. Like, it was just like, it just blinded everybody, and girls were fainting. But I also remember friends of our family growing up that told me about seeing Tina Turner in the Royal Gorge, and they all waited.
Oh.
She came down in a helicopter, and Scal, all she said was, the minute those legs came out of there, because that was the signature thing for her. She had the legs, the heels, and when they came out, it was like the place just went insane.
Bonkers.
My God.
Yeah. I mean, I believe it. I've been lucky that basically ever since she's been on tour, since that time, I've seen her at least once. And on her final tour, I saw her like 4 times. And man, the energy of like you said, the place goes nuts, people go nuts, but the energy that she puts out herself, like unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's wild. Yeah.
It's wild.
It's great. Yeah. So let me ask you this. And I see this every once in a while on bios, and I'm curious. I'm a big fan of NPR. Whenever I see NPR has a quote, or they're encouraging, or somebody's on Tiny Desk, or something that happens NPR-wise, I'm always very curious how much that adds to your fan base and gives you more exposure. Because to me, I really feel like even in between segments on NPR, they are very in tune with very hip, progressive kind of music that's on the landscape, and nothing's dated. They're very progressive about it. So my question is, how much of that added to your bio and them giving you recognition is added to your fan base?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, it certainly is a very nice thing that they said about me. And I think that quotation came from when the telephone game record came out. And so I think it was obviously enormously helpful then, and it's a nice thing to have there now. Me too. I love NPR, and I'm always looking to them for interesting, eclectic, sort of like you said, like kind of at the pulse, sort of at the bleeding edge of what's happening, and something that you're not going to find everywhere else. So it's definitely helped. I can't quantify how much, but it's definitely helped.
Let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger self around the time that you were starting out in music professionally, and you could give your younger self a bit of advice based on what you've learned all these years. What would it be?
Oh man, that's a great question. Just do it for the love. Like never lose sight of doing it for the love. Like, you can't start. Art's unpredictable. And if the second you get attached to some kind of outcome is the second you start to suffer. Outcomes and comparisons, this is the world of suffering. So I'd say don't compare yourself. Don't get attached to an outcome. Just stay in the magical place of creation and in the flow and in the present moment with what you're doing musically, and everything will be okay. It'll all work out. Not in some sort of trite, it'll all work out, you'll rock it to stardom kind of way, because it might not. It's art. I mean, the highway of art is littered with plenty of incredible people that, either never got noticed ever or didn't get noticed till, 100 years after they died. I mean, Vincent van Gogh is my favorite example. But, you read the letters of Vincent van Gogh, and he's talking in very sublime terms about his connection to his art. And that, so that's what matters. So that's what I'd say to myself, which is, keep your eye on what matters, which is the love of doing it and the love of creating something new and connecting, and everything else will either happen or won't happen, but it's really none of your business. That's the first thing I would say. And the second thing I would say is stress plus rest equals growth. Like the equation is not stress plus stress equals growth. Like you need to rest as hard as you work, So work hard, try to be your best, and then rest hard. And that's how you grow.
So we obviously all miss that old world from, say, March of last year, early March 2020. When we do return to the stage and we return to the crowds and get back to life, what is it that you miss the most that you're going to look forward to? That's one part of it. And what do you hope we all realize about this absence of live music when we come back?
Oh, man. I want to ask you those two questions after I answer them, if I could.
Please, yeah.
So what am I looking forward to? What am I most excited about? Oh, yeah. Man, I'm just excited about being in a room with people, connecting. And that includes both my fellow musicians up there on the stage with me and the people, an arm's reach away, listening. I mean, that for me really is what music is about. Like that present moment, that time where your cell phone's, away and you're sitting there and you've come to experience a moment. And that sacred place there where we're all, in the present, hopefully, if everybody's doing their job. That I'm looking the most forward to. I'm looking forward, and then so what do I think, what do I think we should remember? What should everybody else remember? I mean, just how precious it all is. I mean, I'm lucky in that I spent 10 years of my life, or close to 10 years of my life, living in Canada and making music up there in a place where the government actually supports artists. Everybody who's doing this, everybody who's making something, music you love, who's making some art you love of any kind, I don't care if it's dance or painting or poetry or writing, very few people are getting really rich off of it. And so I guess I would say, one thing about this time period has been, of course, with all social justice awareness and awakening we've been experiencing, is that people need to be, paid for their work, whether their work is writing a song or whether their work is fighting the good fight and for social justice, like, you know, that I want to live in a world where people who do that job can survive.
I totally agree.
So what's your answer to those two questions, Joe?
The first part of that is I miss taking my wife to go see a jazz show whenever we want to, because Kansas City was totally full of those places. And just to be able to see all these musicians that I've interviewed and talked to and feel very connected with in this town, and even abroad when people come in, I'm really looking forward to that. And also I'm looking forward to taking my kids to a baseball game or something to feel connected to, the rest of humanity. But I also think, too, what I hope we all realize when we come back from all of this is that this isn't a temporal feeling like post 9/11, where we all kind of like get back at it after a month and we kind of let all of it wash away. And then we start going after all of these countries that had nothing to do with being the aggressor. It's like this was a biological virus that was beyond any reproach. And whether we want to adhere to a conspiracy that's far-fetched or whatever it is, the reality of it is that viruses have been around for a long, long time, and they're not some weird secret assailant like waiting to sneak into our house. So I think we all need to really like capture that, because for me, going to jazz shows as a journalist, I'm always very cognizant of that position that I have, and I always would take a deep breath in before any show that would happen, and I would be very grateful for the fact that I was there. So, like, for instance, the last live show I saw was March 3rd, and it was Bill Frisell at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, and it was one of the most unique shows that I've ever seen.
Was that at one of his solo shows?
That was with the trio, and that was with Petra Hayden was singing, and just imagine this. Okay, so no one really knew what was going on. We were kind of being told, this is going to pass. It's no big deal. But COVID was in the air. So towards the end of this show, okay. So before going, my wife says, "What's this show going to be like?" I said, "I don't know." And she ended up crying like 3 times during the show. It was the best show she ever saw. Towards the end of it, Petra stands up in this like almost like a church robe. You know, she had these phalange arms out and starts singing "We Shall Overcome," and the whole crowd kind of like in some preternatural like thing, like animals reacting to an earthquake. All of us start standing up and swaying and sing "We Shall Overcome."
Wow.
So
I just got chills.
Yeah, I know.
Describe that to me.
Yeah, and last Valentine's Day, I took a picture of her standing up because I took a picture of it and blew it up, and we have it on our wall. I see it every day.
Yeah.
So after that, the eclectic nature of the show, right after that, is they play Ziggy Stardust right after that. Okay? So
That's awesome.
There you go. That's the definable about this show. So after all that happened, but that was my last show in that before Corona world, and what an amazing experience. So anyways, in a long way, I know the way I felt before that show, knowing that the world was going to end the way we knew it, and knowing that how grateful I was every time before a show started like that. So I hope we all take that. I love all these answers that I get from musicians, and it's always like being very grateful for what we have because it is precious. But I hope that feeling sustains itself, and that vigor and energy is enough to open up places like the Blue Whale and the Jazz Standard and other places, because that force of human energy is going to be needed very much so whenever we get back to it.
Yeah, I agree. Amen.
So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a version, perception, interpretation of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your fans. But you're the one that's living your life. Who do you think you are?
Oh man, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that I am a seeker. I think I am a person who strives to stay in the moment and be present. And I think I'm just a visitor passing through. And I hope to stay as peaceful and positive and present and as I can between, the first day my eyes opened and the last day when they closed. That's really it. I mean,
right on.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great answer. And I think sometimes when people answer that, there's a notion of it needs to be more elaborate. But I think some of the more powerful ones are the succinct ones, because that's just the way it works. You know?
Well, in the end, I'm just a person, and the music. I'm a person before I'm a musician, and connecting to people and being present with them with love, and is the most important thing to me.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you for taking some time out to talk about your career in music, this world that we live in.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, and be well, and I hope to see you out on the road someday.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and singers in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Kate for her class, time, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.